Now, as just these two images suggest, does anybody recognize this painting? You've seen it before. I am absolutely certain that you have all seen it before. Right? It crowds textbooks from elementary through middle school. Who is this guy?
George Washington.
George, and what is he doing?
Posing.
So, yes, it does look like, I would not, he's a bold guy, right? If I'm moving across an icy river in a boat that crowded, I'm sitting down.
Wait, that's an icy river?
Yeah, no, that's icy river. So it is George Washington crossing the Delaware, right? American War of Independence. This image you may be less familiar with, the man, the snappy dressed guy, I'll give him definite credit for that, being crowned by an angel, right, is Simón Bolívar, revolutionary in Latin America. So as you might guess, right, some of what ends the first wave of European imperialism is the people in the New World.
I thought the angel was taking it.
No, I believe bestowing it in that case. Although, that's not entirely clear from the image. Now, when we talk about first wave European empires, we do have to be careful because it's not just one type or in one place. On the one hand, we have a very intensive colonization. And that is the colonization of the Americas. Now, this map, don't be careful what you read into this map. Don't worry, it's not in your notes, so it's not going to be there later to confuse you. This is just a map of Spanish colonization, right? But it gives us a good sense, right? Very intensive colonization in the Americas. These are areas under Spanish control. Spain is administering those entire chunks of territory. On the other hand, Europeans have very shallow and superficial colonial presences in Africa and Asia. Again, as you can see in this map, Spain has lots of little places, really just trading posts, basically, in Africa and Asia. The only exception to that is what's called Spanish East Indies, today's Philippines. Right? That was kind of a different story, but that's the lone exception. So intensive colonization in the Americas, very limited colonial presence in Africa and Asia. So, what ends the first wave? One thing, the end of the first wave is a consequence of a building loss of colonial possessions in the Americas. These are maps of North and South America in 1826. There are still European parts, Russian control, British control contested with the United States, and then Latin America, well, South America, is, at this point, almost entirely independent of European control.
That place where Washington kind of looks like Missouri.
Which one?
The place where...
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. That is a striking resemblance to our state. And this loss of colonies is down to independence movements. The one you will be most familiar with, naturally, is the independence movement started by 13 colonies of Great Britain in the modern-day United States, right, along the eastern seaboard of the modern United States. Specifically, our War of Independence from 1775 until 1783. Now, don't get concerned, right, if you think, well, I thought 1776 was the key date. It is, right? That's the date of the Declaration of Independence, but we'd kind of started fighting earlier. Latin American independence movements, there are more of them. We get a series of wars, more or less violent. Brazil breaks away from Portugal with rather less violence than is the case for some of the other countries. But over the span of 1808 to 1826, all that's left is, to Spain, for example, is Cuba and Puerto Rico. That's it. Out of all of their empire in the Americas, that's what's left to them in Latin America. All right, everybody finished with those notes? Another thing that helps to end this first wave of imperialism is that the United States grows to be a pretty powerful country pretty quickly. You're going to find out when you take government, which I hope you do in your junior year, that the United States starts out as a basket case. Can't pay our debts, the country doesn't really work, there are actually lots of little rebellions springing up in the United States. It's a mess. But the U.S. does pretty quickly get its act together. Creates a new constitution in 1789, and it begins to expand and increase its power and its confidence. And one sign of this comes in 1812 with the very uncreative but very helpfully specifically named War of 1812. Sometimes referred to as the Second War of Independence. In a lot of ways, it's an indecisive war, but what it does show is that the United States will stick up for itself as an independent country and assert its rights against Great Britain, which at the time is one of the most powerful countries in the world. And about 12 years later, the U.S. feels even more confident in its power, and it has grown in those not quite 12 years. And we get what's called the Monroe Doctrine. It's named for President James Monroe. And it comes in a speech to Congress. A lot of these things, important doctrines of the United States, come in presidential speeches to Congress. And this is one of them. It's that basically the U.S. saying that the Western Hemisphere is off limits. The Americas are off limits to the Europeans. So it's a declaration that the U.S. would not tolerate any new European colonies in the Americas. We're saying you've lost them or are losing them, right? Because remember, it's these Latin American revolutions happened between 1808 and 1826. So in 1823, they're not all over yet. But the U.S. is saying, you're losing your colonies. We will not tolerate new imperialism by Europe in the Americas. And we also don't want you installing friendly governments, right? Sometimes referred to as puppet monarchs. And if you're wondering, like, what's a puppet monarch? Well, that's like, well, we're going to make Joss the queen of Mexico, but basically we're going to be pulling all the strings, right? Joss is going to be like a marionette puppet, and she's going to do what we want. And we're saying, can't do that. We will not tolerate European political meddling in the newly independent governments in the Americas. Now, if some of you are having flashbacks to earlier American history, and you're like, but yeah, didn't we then take a bunch of territory from Mexico? Yes, we did. We were just saying Europeans can't do it, right? The descendants of European settlers in the United States are definitely going to do it, right? This is where the idea that's often still kicked around that the Latin America is America's backyard comes in, right? I really suggest that you not refer to Latin America as America's backyard, especially to people from Latin America. They tend to frown on that, and understandably so. Yes, Thatcher, you have a question? Yep, come fill out your pass, and I will sign it. And there are oodles of cartoons about the Monroe Doctrine, right? But this is it, right? Uncle Sam is throwing his hat, right, on the Western Hemisphere, and we've got the Europeans, right, represented by those cartoonish characters, right, looking at it, and Uncle Sam is saying, "Stay out." Right? This is now off limits, and that the U.S. would protect it. Right? And over time, when you get to U.S. history next year, you will see examples of the U.S. enforcing the Monroe Doctrine.
I don't know what the date is.
Today is the 29th.
Okay.
There you go, Thatcher.
Thank you.
Welcome. The other thing that ends the first wave of imperialism is a transition, a shift in Europe's efforts to colonize the world, right, and to build their empires. One area of focus, right, symbolized in this political cartoon by, if you don't recognize that, that's a Prussian, right, and it does say German, it's a little hard to read there. The German grab bag, looking at places in Africa. So Africa is part of that shift. And we will learn as we get into the second wave of imperialism about what's called the scramble for Africa in the years before World War I. And also, right, empire building in Asia, where we see the British eye is particularly fixed with the British grab bag to fill with colonies. And this figure represents the Russians. Right? They're also very much interested in Asia and will clash with the British, especially for control there. Now, one of the things to understand is there are lots of reasons for this shift, but as you might have already guessed, one of the reasons that Europeans start to focus their efforts to build empires in Africa and Asia is that they've now been largely shut out of the Americas by independence movements and the growing power of the United States. Okay. Now, our starting point for talking about the end of the first wave is a flashback here to the 13 colonies of Great Britain that become the United States. And if you're looking at this map and you're wondering, I kind of remember some geography, and I think that's Vermont, and I'm pretty sure Vermont's part of the United States. It is, but it wasn't part of the original 13 colonies that became the United States. Vermont is special, right? And they were their own independent country for a while. Of course, they are part of the United States now. Right? But if you were wondering, that's your little bit of trivia for today. Those 13 colonies and kind of the Vermonters on their own were the first to chuck out the European rulers. Why did they do this? Well, what we're going to learn in the next couple of days in some readings and exercises is that there were some important motivations for independence. But equally important, there were also ideas that provided the language and justification for independence. And kind of you can think about this right now with what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. Right? Motivations for Ukraine to fight, this is ours and you can't have it. Right? That's pretty simple. But, right, for a lot of people, that's not enough, right? If I'm saying, like, Adrian, man, I need some guns, and I need some stuff, and I need your help, and Adrian's like, well, why? Well, because this is mine, and I don't want them to have it. And Adrian's like, that kind of sounds okay, but that doesn't sound good enough. They're like, okay, Adrian, this is about democracy, all right? This is about democracy and sovereignty and the rule of law and world peace. Whoa, all right, you sold me, Ukraine. All right, Adrian's going to give you some stuff now. Right? Motivations and ideas are equally important. Right? And we're going to find out that those ideas come from something called the Enlightenment. So we're going to learn about some of those motivations and ideas over the next 2-3 days. I think hoping we can knock it out in that amount of time. We will see. But that concludes our notes for today. Make sure you get those saved and uploaded. Your exit slip is going to go live in just about 2 minutes. We've now reached the point where the clock on the wall is actually faster than the clock on the computer, which you will find out in your future years at Central always happens, right? This clock just gets faster as the year goes on. All right. Did anybody need me to go back and cover anything in the notes before I take them down? All right.